He spent years insisting he didn't do it. A former Navy serviceman with top-secret clearance. A man shaped by loss, obsession, and a relationship that refused to end quietly. Even as the date was set, even as his health failed, even as the needle waited, David Russell Hosier maintained one thing until his final breath. He was innocent. But how did a man with a structured military past end up here? And was this really a simple crime of jealousy, or something far more complicated? To understand how it all ended, you have to start at the very beginning. David Russell Hosier was born in Indiana in 1955, into what looked like a stable, disciplined household. His father, Glenn Hosier, was a Navy veteran and a law enforcement officer, a man who represented order, structure, and authority. By all accounts, David adored his father. They hunted together, camped together, spent long hours riding and talking. Then, everything collapsed. In 1971, Glenn Hosier was killed in the line of duty by a murder suspect. The loss wasn't just sudden, it was violent, public, and permanent. Friends later said David never recovered from it. His mother, overwhelmed by grief, emotionally withdrew. The family fractured, and a teenager who had relied heavily on his father suddenly had no anchor at all. That absence of guidance, of stability, would quietly follow him for the rest of his life. But instead of falling apart immediately, David did something else. He buried it, and that decision would come at a cost. But the next chapter of his life would give him something he desperately needed: structure. After his father's death, Hosier was sent to military school. Rather than finding belonging, he became socially isolated. Still, the discipline stuck. At just 19 years old, Hosier joined the U.S. Navy. He would serve for 6 years, working in communications, a role that required top-secret clearance. To the outside world, he appeared reliable, controlled, trustworthy. But behind the uniform, cracks were already forming. Hosier married young. That marriage ended before his naval career even finished. He remarried later, had 2 children, and that relationship also collapsed. By the late 1980s, the emotional strain was impossible to ignore. The discipline gave him order, but it didn't fix what was breaking underneath. And once the military structure disappeared, things began to unravel fast. In the late 1980s, Hosier's mental health took a sharp turn. He was diagnosed with depression that included psychotic features. Later, bipolar disorder was added to the list. He was involuntarily hospitalized. This wasn't a private struggle. It was serious enough to involve the state. Years later, he reportedly suffered a stroke that caused brain damage, further complicating an already unstable mental state. Then came behavior that couldn't be ignored. In the early 1990s, Hosier was arrested for assault involving a romantic partner. He served time in prison and was released on parole. Each incident was a warning sign. Each one pointed to a pattern of emotional volatility, fixation, and loss of control. But none of it stopped what came next, because in the background, another relationship was quietly intensifying, one that would define the rest of his life. Angela Gilpin was married, estranged but not gone. What started as a relationship eventually stretched on for years. It wasn't brief, it wasn't casual. According to court records, Hosier and Angela were deeply involved emotionally. Angela had 2 children with her husband, Rodney Gilpin, and for a long time her marriage was distant enough that Hosier believed there was a future. Then, in mid-2009, everything shifted. Angela and Rodney began reconnecting. Reports say their relationship improved. The separation ended. For Hosier, it wasn't just rejection, it was replacement. Prosecutors later claimed he became enraged by the reconciliation, that messages grew increasingly hostile, that Angela felt threatened enough to file reports alleging stalking behavior. Hosier denied this portrayal completely, but regardless of which version you believe, one fact is undeniable. On September 28, 2009, the situation exploded. That evening, Angela and Rodney Gilpin were found dead inside their apartment in Jefferson City, Missouri. The discovery shocked the neighborhood. Investigators moved quickly. Almost immediately, attention turned to Hosier. Police pointed to threatening voicemails and messages allegedly sent before the killings. A written note was later discovered that prosecutors said showed intent. Hosier had already fled the state. He was arrested in Oklahoma not long after. Inside his car, authorities recovered multiple firearms. One of them was believed to be connected to the crime. To investigators, the case seemed clear. To Hosier, it was all wrong. He insisted he had nothing to do with the deaths, and soon that claim would be tested in court. Hosier was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But something unusual happened. Before trial, the charge related to Rodney Gilpin's death was dropped for reasons never fully explained publicly. The prosecution focused solely on Angela's death. Their argument was simple: jealousy, anger, revenge. Hosier's defense centered on one thing: he didn't do it. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty. Not just of murder, but additional charges related to weapons and burglary. Then came sentencing. The jury unanimously recommended death. Hosier showed no public remorse, something prosecutors emphasized heavily. But even as the sentence was finalized, Hosier remained firm. He said the system had it wrong. Hosier spent more than a decade on death row. During that time, appeal after appeal was denied. State courts rejected his claims. Federal courts followed. Even the U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene. Online, quiet debates began resurfacing. Some questioned whether mental health had been adequately considered. Others focused on the dropped charge and narrow scope of the conviction. Hosier never changed his story, not once. As the execution date approached, his physical health began to fail rapidly. Just weeks before his scheduled execution, Hosier was hospitalized with heart failure. Family members said his condition worsened daily: swelling, pain, severe discomfort. A clemency petition was filed. It cited childhood trauma, military service, mental illness. The request was denied. The governor stated that Hosier had taken lives without remorse, and justice demanded the sentence be carried out. His spiritual advisor later said Hosier had accepted his fate, but not his guilt. On June 11, 2024, David Russell Hosier was executed by lethal injection. His final meal included steak, baked potato, pie, and juice. In his final statement, he once again said he was innocent. He told his family he loved them, and then it was over. Was this the execution of a jealous ex-lover driven by rage, or the tragic end of a deeply damaged man shaped by loss, instability, and obsession? The courts made their decision, but the questions and the debate remain. And that's where this story truly ends, with you deciding what you believe.